Some of you may remember that as we read through the Acts of the Apostles, Paul had a regular job. This really shows Vicar's up, doesn't it, when you see what Paul accomplished. Paul had a regular job, and his regular job was he made tents. He was a tent maker. And when he arrives at the home of Aquila and Priscilla in Ephesus, they are tent makers, and he helps them out in their business. It's all fascinating stuff, isn't it? But you know, what I want to say to you is this. It's believed that, I read a hypothesis, that grandfather was the original owner of a tent making business. And the reason that they were such a distinguished business, and also honoured with the title Roman citizens, is because they were making tents for the Roman army. Now I want you to think about this. In artisan, as a craftsman in what he was doing, the most important thing about building a tent is it works. It works, whatever that means for a tent. But you imagine it's going to be something along the lines of this, that it's waterproofed in a certain way. It'd be rubbish in a certain way. It'd be rubbish to have a tent, wouldn't it? And the Roman armies, different group, cohorts of different legions and so on, in tents, and this rain coming through. And also maybe the possibility that in some way they were able to kind of do a little bit of draft proofing. Maybe Paul had actually moved into the air, sewn in ground sheets. I don't know, but it had to work. And Paul uses a word throughout his writings, all the way through from Romans, all the way through to Philemon. And he uses this word, energeia. Energeia, you feel like it as energy, don't you? But it's not, it means effectuality, it's efficaciousness, okay? It's ability to do what it needs to do. And almost certainly he draws that from tent making. His tent making had to be effectual. It had to do what it was intended to do. Otherwise it was a waste of time. So when Paul, in his writings, uses it, he now applies it to salvation. He now applies it particularly to Jesus. That it works. Remember at the beginning of Romans, Paul uses these words. He says in chapter 1, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. It is the power of God unto salvation. It is a power which will literally move you into a place of freedom. That's incredible words, isn't it? Now here what Paul writes is this. He says, when I came to you, I had an option. I could have come spouting loads of stuff. I could have come trying to emulate those sophoi, the wise men who travel around the city of Corinth doing speeches with fabulous rhetoric. I could have been one of those, but I didn't. I came in this way. I only wanted you to know Jesus and Him crucified. That made that cool. You can remember the Corinthians were largely now Gentiles. This is 55 AD. They're mostly Gentiles. It started with a lot of Jews, but now they're mostly Gentiles. But he says, I came to you, I didn't adopt your culture, but I told you that the epicenter, the core of everything, the focus of the gospel message is Jesus on Calvary. That's what he's saying. And for Paul, he never moves off that. It's almost as if Paul says, in that event on Calvary in AD 28, AD 30, whenever it was, something happened by universal and of epic proportion. Jesus' death is the source of everything that you need. That's absolutely amazing. So he's saying that is the core. And for him it was. You think about him, he'd been a Jew all that time, an honoured Jew, a highly educated Jew, a Jew with authority. And it's almost as if he's saying now, it never worked, that never worked, but this does. Beginning in Romans chapter 10, Paul writes these words concerning the Jews. He says, I bear them witness. They have a zeal, but it's not enlightened. That's a big thing to say, isn't it, about the religion he's just come from. They've got a zeal, they're totally enthusiastic, but it doesn't work. It doesn't do what it's a drafty tent that lets rain in. Okay, let me tell you the next point he makes here. In the same place is this. The question we need to ask ourselves, well, what is the platform we need to move from in order to take hold of the fullness of whatever happened on Calvary? How can we feel the flowing of that power and of that salvation from that cross? And then Paul uses these words. He says, when I came to you, I didn't come with high-flown words of wisdom. Uperoke, that Greek word is. I didn't come with words which were kind of very, very sophisticated. He says, but in fact, I came to you in fear. I came to you in trembling. I came to you in weakness. That's what he says. And that's our platform. When we're in that position, that's when God moves. We come to that position and we're thinking to ourselves, you know what? I'm not sure if I'm a very good Christian. I'm not sure really if I've got hold of the right end of the stick with this. I am not sure that I know the fullness of God in a way that I need to. I just feel very, very fragile in my faith. Paul is saying this. That's when God gets going. That's when God can do things inside us. That's where He wants us. There is no place for sophisticated and showbiz kind of personalities in Christianity. Because God is going to operate in that area always. In our weakness we will find strength. In our suffering we find victory. It's always going to work that way. Let me say the third thing. And then he says this, that when I came, I didn't come with those words, but I came in demonstration of the Holy Ghost. In other words, it wasn't theories. It wasn't doctrines. It wasn't preaching. You saw the Holy Ghost move in each of you. I came in the power of the Holy Ghost, in demonstration of the Holy Ghost power. And for me and you, these are the keys. I'm going to stop now. Let me just say one final thing. You know, for Paul, when the Holy Ghost came on him, something happened to him which revolutionized his faith and his walk with the Lord. And the only way I can think of it is this: for many Christians for a long time, it becomes almost like a graft. You know, that we're really working at it and struggle and I'm not very good. And obviously Paul in Judaism was doing his best, even to the point of thinking that killing Christians might have been a way to get on in God's good. That's the way he was doing it. It was hard work. But all of a sudden, he lifts off. You know, all the way down to the 9th century AD, from 10,000 BC, bread was the staple diet of everybody. But the interesting thing was, it was always labour intensive. And in those days, right at the very beginning, because somehow they had to fix up a system of basically rubbing rocks together with the grain in order to make it into a flour. And it was hard work. You've seen them. Where they'd have a big wheel and turn it by hand. Now the reason I say the 9th century is because that's in Iran. Windmills appeared. And somebody had a brilliant idea. What if we could actually use the power of the wind by a series of gears to turn the stones which crushes the grain into flour? Now that was Paul's discovery. Paul is saying this. You've got to put your sails out. You've got to put the arms of your windmill out and catch the wind. No longer are we working in just that piety. We're looking for the demonstration of the Holy Ghost and of power. And the way we do that, of course, you remember the Holy Ghost is the same word in Hebrew, ruach, in Aramaic, rucha, in Greek, pneuma. They all mean both the Holy Ghost, but they mean it's the wind. And for me and you to find that place where our sails go up, we catch the power of the Holy Ghost. And all of a sudden, that which has been an intensive grind for us, that which has just been a craft of thinking, I'm hopeless, the Holy Ghost starts moving in us in a way that we never thought was possible. That's what he says here. Power from Calvary, the epicenter of all salvation, the focus, the core of everything that will ever happen to us from God, flows from that hill that day. The merits of his passion, we call it in the Book of Common Prayer, is ours, and then taken by the Holy Ghost, and all of a sudden we are lifting off. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.